Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the YouTube channel, Martino Puccio. No Matt Santangelo today. Santangelo is being very much an adult these days, so he can't do podcasting too much. But instead, we got a good friend of the State of Play podcast, a good friend of mine, a good friend of Matt's, Roberto Rojas of Low Limit Football and DAZN. I'll stick to DAZN too because it is your big time job right now. But first of all, how are you? Great to have you on.
Lovely to be here, Martino. Thank you for having me. And yeah, here we are right in the dead heat of the transfer window. Certainly it's finally July, so a lot of transfers have been going on. And I'm excited to talk about one that for both of us is definitely close to our hearts in Christian Pulisic.
Yeah, big time. So that's the number one thing that we're going to be discussing this episode, especially since it is the biggest news concerning, in my opinion, Milan and especially the U.S. men's national team. Roberto and I are both from the Northeast in the U.S., so obviously if you ever see us, we always talk about the U.S. men's national team all the time. But yeah, I mean, let's get to it. We know from certain people and sources, I guess you could say, that Pulisic is pretty much a done deal at this point. The figure is going to be around 22 million. That's already been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano and Gianluca Di Marzio. The structure has been fluctuating in most places, but the deal would be around 18 plus 4 million in bonuses. There is rumors of a sell on, but we'll see if that is a part of the final deal. Pulisic obviously has 1 year left on his contract with Chelsea. Chelsea have had a fire sale this summer so far, especially from what we've seen in the January window and especially last summer. They've obviously been active in purchasing players as well this summer. But again, this move is not surprising at all. Initially, when Pulisic joined Chelsea, I didn't love it for him. I always thought Chelsea is a very difficult place for a lot of young players, let alone just, regular players. That type of environment over there, it's a sink or swim type of place. Christian, I thought he started off well there, then injuries caught up to him, managerial carousel. And then obviously the ownership change at this point with Todd Bowley coming in for Roman Abramovich. This wasn't surprising that he left, but I am a little surprised that Milan did jump in for this. It's a little bit opportunistic for him. It's not the cheapest of deals for their budget with 1 year left on his contract. But what do you make of him actually trying to push to go to Milan? Because the only other team of interest that we knew of was Lyon, and James Horncastle of The Athletic was saying that they can't even purchase him at this moment in time because they would have to raise funds via a sale. But Milan, obviously, with the Tonali sale, have the funds at this point to get Christian Pulisic, and he wants to join. Already agreed to personal terms. So, what is your overall reaction to him wanting to go to one of the biggest clubs in the world?
Well, I think, certainly, like you said, it really was. And I go back to when he first joined. This was back in 2019, right before the pandemic. And he joined at around, I think, 65. I was like checking my
Just
math
about
the other
70
day.
million. Yeah.
Yeah, and then to see this kind of dropped off in a way, I think no one really expected it. Yes, I think he came in, like you said, with one of that huge amount of pressure for someone like him. And I think, when you go and you realize after all the years that he had gone through at Chelsea, I think, yeah, certainly he looked at the competition. You look at kind of the pressures of what it's like. And I think for us, it could be hard and rightly so. I think when you are the standout player for an entire country and you are trying to really raise the flag and let's be honest, it's still even to this day, and I'm not even trying to like obviously, defend my country or our country in this case, but there is still that stereotype towards American players. Are they good enough? Are they really worth the hype? And we've seen that over the years, even with the likes of maybe a Gio Reyna, Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams, and so on. Balogun now technically ours as well, but it's that kind of thing. It's like, are they really here to play? Can they really show out and be world class? I think that was always the expectation. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone that way. So you look at a different route. You look at how he can kind of change his career in a way. Now, look, he's still young. He's 24 years old. He turns 25 in September. I think even then, he's probably not even in his prime yet, Martino. I think he's edging close to there, but he still hasn't even hit it yet. So I think for him, it was the case of trying to see what would work best for him. And I think certainly playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world, like Milan, I think it goes without saying. And I think Lyon are a big club in itself, but I think
Yeah.
he understood that kind of perception of, this is Milan, this is the biggest club in Italy for some. This is a club that
This
has
channel
had,
it is,
for
yeah.
at least this channel, but like this has the multiple Champions Leagues, all the history, and
Yeah.
I think for him, and of course playing in the Champions League, I think that's something that he wanted to do for his career. So it doesn't come for me as a surprise personally. I'm not a Milan fan or anything like that, but I think for him to really go into that kind of club and to really stay in that kind of path, because Chelsea and Milan, they are world-class clubs. Whether or not you could talk about their history and whatnot, but they're still amongst the top 10, 15 clubs in the world. And so when you have someone going into that kind of environment, it allows them maybe not as much as pressure. I mean, there's probably going to be more elevated pressure now because of the fact that he's coming in as kind of their star signing for the time being. And I think, for me, I think it's a good way to get a new restart. Hopefully Pioli can get him working in a position that hopefully would work best for him. But for me, on all accounts, I think it's a good move, and hopefully that it could finally pay off in what we really didn't see much of Pulisic over there at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, I think the first 2 seasons, I thought we really saw what his potential was. Even during their Champions League campaign run, he had a significant impact on that. He stepped up in the tie against Atletico Madrid. And again, whether or not it's justified with the fee that he had, you could say the same thing for Kai Havertz as well, with the amount that he was purchased for. Did he really step up or live up to the same hype? And that's a player that grew up and was playing in Germany. He's a German player, like Pulisic is going to get judged differently because he plays for the US men's national team. But to break it down like this, where does he fit? We know his best position, right? If anyone follows US men's national team, or if you followed Pulisic through the course of his career in Europe, you know that the left wing is his preferred and best position. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that's wrong with it at Milan is that arguably the second or third best left winger in the world plays for Milan, and that's Rafael Leao. So he's not going to be supplanting him in that starting role. Milan plays a 4-2-3-1. At times it kind of shifts to a 4-3-3, but for the sake of argument, it's a 4-2-3-1. Pulisic has been rumored to be the number 10 in this one so far, potentially on the right wing as well, because that doesn't have a lot of talent, but they're in for Chukwueze as well from Villarreal. We'll see what transpires with that one. They up their offer there. But Pulisic is at 10. I think he's talented and technical enough to play in multiple positions across the front. I question it a little bit as the 10 long term, week in, week out sort of thing. What do you think about that? Do you think that's okay for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a test for him. And I think, obviously being in a position where, you have someone, like you said, arguably one of the best wingers in the world playing in the position that you're best in is certainly a challenge. But, this is someone who has played in multiple positions. Like you said, he can play on the right, he can play centrally, he can even play as a striker if he wants to. Now, that's not obviously the way that he likes to play, but I think it's certainly a position, and I think that's always been something that I've always liked the Pulisic, is that you don't always see him on that left wing. You can see him on the right. You could see him move centrally as well. You could see him be very much flexible, and I think Pioli would like that, because I think certainly with the players that he's trying to bring in, it allows him to hopefully connect properly with whatever players that they have. Obviously, the familiarity of getting someone like Loftus-Cheek in that center midfield, assuming that he does start, I think would definitely allow him to be a bit more free. I think, again, like you said, the big question is, like you said, that inconsistency. I think we've seen time and time again someone that obviously is very talented and certainly on his day can be a really good player, but is, of course, injury prone. We've seen that at Chelsea. We even saw it at Borussia Dortmund in his early years. So I think this is where my kind of concern is as well.
Yeah.
And this is to say that, playing in Italy and playing in Germany and playing in England, they're all three different types of leagues, but it will be very physical. I mean, this is a league that will allow you to really think like that. It doesn't forgive. So that's something, you have a lot of really tough defenders to edge out to. And I think, that's something that hopefully he can learn. And I think he could adapt, because I think if he was able to do that at Chelsea and do it at Dortmund, why can't he do it at Milan? Certainly, I don't think that shirt will weigh too much about him. Of course, The big concern, of course, will be now is what it will mean for him, like I said, representing a whole country. Because I think, of course, Balogun has hit his marks in France, and you have the likes of a Gio Reyna, Tyler Adams, and whatnot. But
Yeah.
he's still America's best player.
Yes.
So I think this is where that kind of pressure, and I think he takes it very well. This is someone that I think is a good character more than anything, and he's learned from those experiences that perhaps it doesn't matter if he's at Chelsea, Borussia Dortmund, and now Milan. This shirt will he can fit to the idea to the events, and he could really go off and try to do something. Whether or not he can do that consistently is the big question.
Yeah, and another thing is, you talk to any Milan fan, they're already weary of their medical staff to begin with, and the amount of times that certain players can play. We've seen over the past few years, players struggle with injuries. One of them being Benacer, again, Mike Magnan, and quite a few others. But that's going to be the biggest challenge for him. And we hear all the time from players talking about how difficult Serie A is from a tactical perspective and adapting, and how difficult it is to score a goal. You've been hearing it from Cristiano Ronaldo, a top 3 goal scorer of all time. He said that was the toughest league that he had to adjust to in terms of scoring. That says a lot. And Ronaldo, he wasn't playing in the greatest of Juve sides, but that's still Cristiano Ronaldo. That it weighs a lot. And, I think the best strikers of all time have played in this league. And you could go through all of them pretty much. I think the only one I could think of might be Suarez was the only one that didn't really play in the league over the past 20, 25 years.
I guess you could say Messi as well, but he's not really a striker.
Messi a little different. Yeah, but exactly. But that's the point, though. When that's even consistently said, and it's also the consensus is this has been the weakest the league has been, and God knows how long, maybe the 60s. I don't even know. Even then, it was still incredibly strong. But again, that's the point. I think Pulisic, the pressure isn't the issue. For me, I think it's tactically, where does he fit in the long term? And then on top of it, is he able to stay healthy? If he could do 2 of those things, I think he'll thrive. And I think the eyeballs on the club as well, especially because you and I have talked about it all the time with your co-host, Joe Usello. Milan got worse at probably the worst time that you could have during the social media rise, in which it was so much easier to access and watch other clubs and teams. When you're one of the worst teams at the time, especially one of the top clubs, not many will be interested. Now they will. He'll be the 3rd American to join Sergiño Dest this past season, obviously, in Oguchi Onyewu. Zlatan is not the teammate of either of them. He did not get in a fight with Sergiño Dest, as far as we know. But yeah, I think it's going to be an exciting time. And, once you just look on the brighter side of things with this deal, if you're a Milan fan, and especially US men's national team fan, I think it'll be a lot more exciting. And again, if you're a US fan that doesn't really follow Serie A or Milan, this is the place to be. Trust me with that. So again, the bigger news-ish that we want to talk about, and someone that pretty well. This was even someone we discussed because he played for Mallorca, was the youngest ever player to debut in La Liga. That's Luca Romero. We're very familiar with him as well because he's Mexican-born but represents Argentina on the international side of things. Was at Lazio this past season, is still just a teenager. A little interesting. I've talked to some Lazio fans and that entire situation of what kind of happened down there. Just wasn't the right opportunity for him to develop and grow. Milan is definitely one of the better clubs in Italy for younger talents to thrive and kind of come along. We know he is super talented. He's one of these wonder kids that we've seen over the past few years or so. What kind of profile can you give here? Because this kid scores bangers when he scores them. The frequency in which they occur is not often, obviously, because it's very difficult. He's obviously on the smaller frame of things around the 5'5", 5'6" area. So you have to be elite in certain attributes in your game to make it at this level. What does Luka do so well that clubs are enamored with him that they want to sign him, and especially a club like Milan? The contract's through 2027. He was presented today. I'll bring up some of the picks as you talk here. So yeah, what are your overall thoughts about him joining Milan? But first and foremost, his type of profile and skill set.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he joined. It's kind of a weird life for really Luca Romero. He was Mexican-born to Argentine parents, but then when he was like 3, he moved to Spain. So he's got Mr. Worldwide written over him, but eventually he did choose Argentina. And, I had the fortune of seeing him at the U20 World Cup, where they was hosted in Argentina, and that kind of thing gets to you sometimes. That kind of pressure, to play for your country is one thing, but to do it in this stage, a World Cup or a competition that has your country in it, to do it in that home country, I think adds to him a lot of pressure. And he did spectacular. You talk about one of the bangers. I remember one of the goals that he scored, I think it was in the second game, if I'm not mistaken, that he scored an absolute banger of a goal from like 30 yards. And I think that's something that I think a lot of clubs like him. I think, this is someone that has tons of flair. Like you said, he isn't the biggest type of guy. He's 160, what is he, 5'5", 5'6". He's
Right
everyone
in
is.
our territory, brother.
I mean, this guy, again, like people want to say, oh, new Messi and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean,
I was gonna say that.
he doesn't play like Messi. He's more of an attacking midfielder. He's very versatile. He likes to pick up the ball, and he likes to go at players. Like you said, he likes to really have that kind of versatility, mainly in the wing as well.
Yeah.
So that's
Right
something
side.
that, in a similar way, I don't want to go back to Pulisic, but maybe this is someone that is a bit more raw than Pulisic, and I think has more to demonstrate. Again, he's 18, and for someone who's played already, like you said, since the age of 15, that was the youngest player to ever play in a top 5 European league, and to do that consistently, then go to Lazio, where again he didn't have the time. It was very difficult to break into a Lazio side with all those attacking players. Now he goes to Milan, and I think he's just he's on that onward trajectory, I would say, and I think this is
Agreed.
someone that can obviously better himself. And certainly for an Argentina standpoint, you look at some of the players that they still have on their disposal, and yeah, unfortunately the days of Di Maria and Lionel Messi will come to an end, but you have those replacements, like we've seen already in the World Cup with Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez, and even some players who didn't even play in the World Cup who are still coming through, like Enzo Fernandez, but he's more of a midfield player. But like someone like I'm trying to go into Alejandro Garnacho, who's doing well at Manchester United, and Luca Romero, who obviously Scanoli really liked. He hasn't played a first team game yet, but I would not be surprised if he does it very, very soon, be it in a World Cup qualifiers or possibly the Copa America next year. So this is someone that I think is very much a talented but raw player. I think he still is someone that can definitely improve technically. I think definitely you look at the size of him, like you said, he's not a big force, but he has that kind of flair, similar to what we see in the likes of a Messi or even Aguero back then. This is someone that can do that. So I think he's someone that, again, we're gonna have to wait and see where Pioli prefers him, if he wants to play, right alongside Leao on the other wing, depending if Pulisic can play there too, or if he's going to go a bit more center, where someone like, Benacer plays, or Salamancas or something like that. We're going to have to wait and see. But I think, again, this is someone that is still very much talented, and I think can definitely improve in a side that, let's be real, I think Milan does well with its youth. I think certainly if they're given the opportunity, and I think someone like Romero has demonstrated that over the last few seasons, that I think someone like him can really flourish in Pioli's system.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were a little turned off about how a teenager again is onto his third club before he's 19. Again, it's not it's always contextual, and I think a lot of people lose sight of that. Sarri is a known veteran reliant type of manager. He doesn't overly rotate his players. I think that's a very well known thing that he's done. And from talking to fans of Lazio and just like other people around them, saying it really wasn't on Luca as to why this move really didn't happen with them long term. It's sort of like, if you think you have an opportunity to play elsewhere that could develop you further in your career, then so be it. And that's technically what happened. He got more minutes as his time went on with them. There was definitely certain things to look at that were positives, but at the end of the day, there isn't too much to take away when you're only playing 148 minutes over the course of 6 matches within Serie A. Again, just to even be good enough at that age to get on the pitch for a team that finished second in Serie A, the highest that they've ever finished since they won the Scudetto all the way back in 2001. I think that kind of speaks volumes about where they're at and how they viewed him. For Milan, I am interested to see what happens with him. You mentioned right wing, the number 10 position. There's Pulisic, Charlotte de Ketelare is going to be there as well. We'll see what else they do with the number 10 spot. But the right wing, there's Salamakers, Junior Macias. I believe Macias will be on his way out. One of those right wingers will be. So you could see Luca get more game time over there, or they even shift to Catalare as well. But overall, I wouldn't be overly stunned if he were to be loaned out too. I don't think that's so far fetched. We'll see what happens. There's been a lot of talk that Pioli will have his evaluations over the course of the summer to see how he does. And if he thinks that he needs to go out on loan, I think that is something that you will see. But overall, I think this is a low risk, high reward type of move for Milan. And I don't think there's any downside to it. I'm excited to see how this develops over the course of time. Quick predictions for Friday, by the way, my man, because we're going to wrap up here. USA going to knock out Canada?
I think so. I think the way that they've been playing has been very much good. I mean, yeah, obviously the game against Jamaica was certainly a big test, and I think Canada, from what I've seen, it's not been the best Canada sides, but I think they're always been a kind of a difficult side as of recently, and certainly they want their revenge after the Nations League. So I'd say, yeah, I'm confident. I'll go and even put a score on that one. I'm going to say 2-0 for the United States on that one.
All right, 2-0 for the United States. Yeah, listen, I'm actually just very happy that they're just playing well with this second unit and these other types of players. I think this really shows the actual depth that the U.S. men's national team has compared to recent years. I know there was a lot of comments about Ferreira and his hat trick, and I thought there was a lot of really good points there about, and this again is just sidetracking if you're not interested in this, it's just U.S. men's national team. But just to have a player like that is capable of bagging a hat trick, regardless of what the talent, I don't want to hear about the talent. If it's against Trini, what happened in 2018? I don't want to hear it. I genuinely just don't want to hear it
You
from
play to
anybody.
score. I mean, yeah, Jesus Ferreira can do that, but how many players in history has not scored hat tricks?
In the U.S. men's national team, like
Do you
how
know
many
how
times did we
difficult?
see?
Do you know how difficult it is
Yes.
for anyone to score a goal, let alone play against these sides?
And first of all, Trini is going to give you their very, very, very best in this tournament because they also know that sometimes these options are, limited to strike when the iron is hot. Regardless of what the scoreline is, we saw quote unquote the best generation when it was Clint Dempsey and all those guys. And no disrespect to them, I loved a lot of those players growing up. Those were the best ones that I saw at the time. But there's a difference. There's levels to this game, man. And I think US is taking a step in the right direction. Christian Pulisic, more than likely to be a Milan player. We'll see what happens with Yunus Musa. That'd be a very cool move. Any final thoughts, Roberto, on how well Pulisic will? Do you think he'll be? Where do you think he'll rank in the number one, the top 5 selling jerseys for Milan? And give note that Rafael Leao did change his jersey, so it's kind of likely that he'll be number 1 at this point as the number 10. I think Pulisic will be either 2 or 3 because Zlatan and Tonali were up there in the top 3. They're both gone. I think Teo will be along those types of players there, but I definitely do see Christian Pulisic, given the American, backing at this point, that he could be a top 3 jersey sale for Milan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think top 3 would be very much realistic. I'm not going to say exactly second or third.
Will you be buying one?
If I can get it at a good price, maybe. I don't own any Italian club shirts as of yet, so maybe this might be my first one, and it might be worth it. So
maybe I think I'm gonna purchase it. I think I'm gonna purchase it. Yeah, but thank you so much, Roberto, for joining us. Low Limit Football. You work with the Zone. Obviously, had your Twitter at the bottom here. Anywhere else that you want to plug? I know Threads came out yesterday, so you probably might want to push something on there if you do.
Yeah, follow me on Threads right now, Roberto Rojas 97 if you're into that. But of course, you can hit me up on Twitter. Check out my podcast, Low Limit Football, that I do with Joe Usello. Obviously, had Martino in here and should have you very soon, actually. Definitely.
Yeah, I know. It's usually my time of the year. I think the last time we talked was the points deduction. Yeah,
it's been a while, so we'll definitely try to have you back on very soon. But some of us are on vacation and on break, so we're gonna have to wait and see. And yeah, thanks again for having me, and all the best to you, and obviously best for Pulisic as Americans to succeed at Milan.
Yes. It's a mutual beneficiary thing for Christian Pulisic to thrive at Milan and the U.S. men's national team. In my opinion, this is the best player to play at the biggest club out of any U.S. men's national team player that we've ever seen. And that's no disrespect to Chelsea. I think currently they might be more successful over the past 10 to 15 years, but Milan is Milan. Make no mistake about it. Guys, follow me on Twitter at Martino Puccio and everywhere else as well. If you have not already, follow Matt Santangelo. He does all of his work for Football Italia and Milan Reports as well. Check out all the stuff on Sempre Milan that I do as well for video-wise, short-form video, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel if you have not already. We're very close to 2,500, and keep the watch hours up. Share it anywhere you can so we could finally hit that threshold. I appreciate everybody so much, Roberto. Thank you once again. Guys, we will talk next time.